G'day, it's Justin Morris here from Mind Matters Athlete Coaching for episode 2 of the No Baloney Bike Talk series. Now, last episode we were chatting about wheels, tyres and brakes, and I wanted to quickly touch on one thing that we didn't mention, and then there's a new evolution in road bike tyres called Tubeless Tyres. Now, this is some technology that has come from mountain biking. It means you can run the tyre onto the rim and eliminate the need for a tube, which usually sits inside the tyre and inflates the pressure to mean you're not riding on a rim. Now, tubeless tyres on a road bike, it's a bit of a controversial thing. Personally, I'll give you my 2 bobs worth. You don't want to do it on a road bike. The weight of a tube is extremely small these days, and the fact that you can run a lower pressure, which is the main benefit of a tubeless tyre, which is why it's a benefit in mountain biking, gives you more traction, is not really going to give you much of a benefit in road cycling. And the other issue is to run a proper tyre tubeless, it makes the tyre itself much heavier. Now, you've got a heavier tyre if you're running tubeless technology, then you've got to put all this sticky white juice inside the tyre, which then adds extra weight. It may feel a bit nicer, the road sensation might be a bit nicer than running a tube. The other big issue I did try it once on road cycling. If you do ever get a flat, remember you've got a smaller chance of getting a flat, but you may still get a flat with tubeless tyres, then you're stuck on the side of the road with a tyre that's very hard to get off the rim, and once you do get it off the rim, you've got sticky white juice splashing all over you. It's not a great look on the side of the road, and you're more than likely going to have to call a cab or a rescue mission to get you home. So tubes are very lightweight. One old school trick, running tubes in road bike tyres, very beneficial and eliminates the benefit that you get from tubeless. Running a pinch of talcum powder between your tyre and your tube reduces that friction between the tyre and the tube, and means that you're going to run that less chance of getting a flat tyre, and it makes it a bit easier to get the tyre on and off the rim. Talcum powder between the tyre and the tube. Old school trick, can do you a lot of favours. Now, this week we're going to talk about shifting. Now, these days, shifting's come a long way to how it used to be. As you can see here on my bike, we've got an electronic cable here instead of an old school actual cable that's doing the shifting. This is called Di2, which Shimano's technology. There's a battery and the battery's in the frame here. There's a little motor in here which changes the gears for us. This is new technology, and to be honest, when I first heard about it, I thought, you've got to be kidding me, this is a load of baloney. Why would you need that on a road bike, electronic shifting? What a waste of time and money. But now I've been using it for a couple of years. To be honest, it's going to be very hard to go back to the traditional cable. The main reason why it's a big benefit to bikes these days, you have a look at the bike here. See, the frames are quite sophisticated. This is an aero frame, which we'll talk about next week. But the fact that the cables, there's no external mounting for the cables. All your cables have to go inside. So if I was running a traditional stainless steel cable, it would go in here, it would have to come out here in the housing and go through all these bends and corners into the lever, meaning you've got a whole bunch of corners inside the frame that the cable has to go through. When you're running a stainless steel old school cable, your shifting is going to suffer a lot because it's got so many corners it's got to go around. Whereas a Di2 cable, it doesn't matter how many corners it's go around, it's relying on the switch and the battery to make the shifting nice and smooth. So Di2 shifting, at first I thought was a bunch of baloney, but now I'm a convert. SRAM and Campag have their copies of electronic shifting, but to be honest, this stuff's the way to go, easy to work on. Another big change recently we've seen is the ratios of gears you can use. See at the front here, this is my big ring. It's called a 53. That means it's got 53 of these teeth around there. If you're looking at a new bike, there's a whole bunch of options of this size of ring you can get. Remember, the more teeth it's got, the harder it's going to be to pedal. Now, when I first started cycling, your general bog standard combination of chain rings was a 53 big one and a 42 little one. Here I've got a 53 and a 39. Remember, the smaller the number, the easier it is to pedal. But these days you're going to have a whole bunch of options. At the front, the smaller the number, the easier it's going to be to pedal, but you're going to lose that big gear. So if you want to race or wanting to really duke it out in a sprint in a criterium or something, you're going to want that 53. Some people even run a 54 or a 55 up the front there. So that's giving you a nice big gear to pedal with. The length of the crank is another thing that you've got a bunch of options for these days. This is 175, which for a tall rig like myself is the way to go. But there's another couple of options, and you'll notice if you look at a professional team, in fact, Team Sky, when they won the Tour de France 3 or 4 years ago, or they still won it many, many years, but every single member on Team Sky, none of them had any crank length higher than 172.5. Reason being, and there were some tall rigs like myself, Chris Froome is no shorty, were riding on the team. The reason why they were running a shorter crank, it's easier to keep that higher cadence where the shorter the crank is. So I've adapted to running a long 175mm crank, so that works for me. But to be honest, if you're getting into it and you want to kind of really train your legs, train your body to spin that higher cadence, then maybe the shorter crank length is the way to go. Your local bike shop, of course, will be able to help you out with that. And the reason we talk about high cadence, spin to win, which is something I work with a lot of my athletes, is they've done studies, and I've read all the research on it, and the researchers ascertained that the higher cadence you're spinning, the more effective your body is at processing the carbohydrates it's got. Carbohydrates are our number one fuel, especially when we're being competitive. So higher cadence is beneficial. Subsequently, shorter cranks can help you out there. So that's your front options for chainring size. At the back here, this is called the cassette. Similar options. Again, it used to be just 1123 or 1121 was your main option. Now these are 11 speed is the most common. You've got many more options to choose from. This is 1128, which I'm using, but you can get 1130, 1132 even. Again, with the bigger the number, well, this is the opposite to the front. The bigger the number you have at the back here, the easier it's going to be to spin up those climbs. So bigger cassette number, more spinning you're going to be able to do. The other thing that's important in this part of the bike, the pedals. Shimano pedals are pretty hard to go past because you've got a nice big platform between the cleat and the pedal, which means the bigger the platform, the more power you're going to be able to put into it. So if you're looking at pedals, think big platform, good way to go. Last thing I'm finishing on with the shifting is the shifters. Now with Di2 we've just got two little switches here, which is very easy to use, and if you're really at crunch time in a race when it's starting to, the chips are down and you're really suffering, it sounds silly, but the ability to just push a little button like that rather than throw a whole lever through as you would have to with an old cable shifting, it does make a bit of a difference and kind of eliminates that struggle to have to shift through a bunch of gears rather than just push a nice easy Di2 button to change your gears. Another thing that's important, within your shifter here, particularly if you're running stainless steel cables, your cables are kind of to show just underneath this hood cover here, and if you're doing a lot of home trainer miles and you're sitting there with your hands here just dripping with sweat, that sweat gets in here and corrodes everything away. So a couple of things you got to do: replace your bar tape regularly because it's going to soak up all your sweat and stink, and then also you're going to want to replace the cables, brake cables and gear cables, which are just underneath that bar tape, which are going to get corroded away and become much more brittle and possibly snap if you're sweating all over them. Also within the shifter, it's worth spraying a lightweight Teflon lube in there periodically, and that'll keep your shifting nice and smooth despite all your sweaty home trainer work. So another important thing is the chain. Keep that lubricated. Here's two different types of lube: dry lube and wet lube. This is Ride Mechanic, Aussie company, does a good job. Dry lube you want to use if it's dry. Wet lube is a bit heavier, but stays on there if you're going to be riding generally for mountain biking, if you're riding through mud and wet weather a lot. Other thing that's important, replace your chain periodically. If you pop down in your local bike shop, you can get a chain checker which checks the wear on your chain. If your chain is beyond, say, 0.75 wear, it's going to start wearing out your cassette and your chainring, which are very expensive parts to replace. So if you can get away with replacing the chain periodically, cheaper, it's going to save you money in the long run, and it's going to give you more extra watts. So thanks for watching again. We'll give you another episode of No Baloney Bike Talk, and we'll chat about maybe the frame and the bearings next time. Keep riding.